On October 25th, Alison, a young artist's life, divided into before and after. She was informed that her parents had died in a car accident. There was a terrible accident on the road. Heavy rain and poor visibility on the road caused it. Fear, uncertainty, and sadness overwhelmed the girl. She was left alone in a big and unfair world. There were no more people she loved more than herself. She was angry, crying, and suffering. She didn't leave the house for weeks. As a child, Alison had a friend named Ron. From an early age, they played with each other and spent much time together. Their families communicated well. Ron and Alison's parents shared a profitable business. They ran a construction company. For a small town, it was a perfect business. Mothers of children were housewives. Their main interest was to attend social events. Their names were known in local circles. They were published in local newspapers, and people watched the lives of each family member. Their popularity grew every year. Their income increased. The fathers dreamed of the future of Ron and Alison and their continuation of the family business. Finally, the children grew up. Ron was immediately taken to the holding of his father. Alison graduated from the Academy of Art. She dreamed of becoming an architect since childhood. Management didn't interest Alison. Ron showed interest in the girl. He courted her, asked her out, and gave flowers and expensive gifts. But Alison didn't reciprocate with Ron. She considered him a good friend, but no more. Her heart was empty and forbidden to him, no matter how hard Ron tried. "What can I do for you?" Ron asked once Alison nervously. "You can't make someone feel something that isn't there and never will be." Alison said it very coldly, without looking him in the eye. She couldn't bring herself to love him. Alison was different, not like her family. Social events and luxurious life were of no interest to the girl. She helped children's homes, attended art exhibitions, and studied. Ron looked like his father. He was persistent, determined, and cunning. Ron was prepared to do whatever he could to achieve his own goals. Ron's father was very stubborn and could do anything for his son to make him happy. He didn't want to watch his son suffer. Dad tried to console his son, gave him many opportunities, acquainted him with the beautiful daughters of his partners, and helped financially. But all this was unsuccessful. There was only one thing in Ron's mind: Alison. Ron's family was trying to support poor Alison. The accident left a significant mark on her life. She lost hope for a promising and bright future. She was grateful to Ron's family for their care and help. She realized that she had no one closer to this family. Out of desperation, the girl agreed to accept Ron's hand and heart and continue the business with him, as her late father would have wished. The girl did not feel happy. She was lost. She lived only by work and the idea that she had to continue to work for those she loved. There was no other way out. Ron and his family cared for Alison. Despite their concern, she felt alone and distant. She was like a bird in a cage she'd driven herself into with hopelessness. She never left her thoughts of her parents. She couldn't believe it had happened. Time was passing and grief remained in her heart. Those she loved were killed. The police closed the case quickly, citing heavy rain on the day of the accident. The press soon fell silent. Although the family was famous in the city, there were many moments she did not understand. She didn't figure out what happened because the accident couldn't have been an accident. Alison took all her grief on canvas. She was distracted from the world only when she was drawing. She was drawing a lot. Her paintings were all gloomy, as was her life. She shut herself down. With Ron, they lived as neighbors, even though the guy was hoping that Alison would one day respond with feelings for him. That never happened. Ron was comfortable with the love being there for him. A year passed. The firm was thriving thanks to its young heirs. One day, Ron came to his father's office and found a strange envelope on his desk. His curiosity played its role. It had all the secret data hidden from tax agents and their gray bookkeeping. He knew it could bankrupt the company. The note said, "Go to the police and admit what you did." Ron immediately went to the office to look for his father. He pulled him from the meeting and asked him for an explanation. "What the hell is this, Dad?" Ron asked. "Let me explain it at home to you tonight," Father answered. "No, I want to know right now," Ron said rudely. "Well, I've been getting these threats lately. I don't know who they are and what they want from me." "Dad, but it says to confess. What do you need to confess?" "I don't know," Ron's father answered. Ron turned and went back to his office. He had long been tormented by thoughts of what was happening. He was trying to understand what his father could be hiding. Ron called his assistant Jack and asked him to provide him with all the company documents for the past 5 years. He checked profits and losses until late at night, suspended licenses and contracts. When Ron came home, Alison was fast asleep. He kissed her and lay down beside her. Ron could not sleep. He wanted to find out what was going on behind his back. How could his dad do something like that? Ron entered his father's office more often, looking for clues. One day, he returned to his father's, and he was not there. There was a new envelope on the table. He opened it impatiently. "You rigged the accident," it was written in a note. Ron turned pale and dropped the envelope with the message. He immediately knew what kind of accident it was talking about. The young man could not believe his father could do such a thing. He was angry and confused at the same time. How could you so cruelly get rid of your friends and business partners? What was the need to do this? He had to hide the note. Ron wanted to expose his father. He started asking tricky questions about the day, October 25th. He asked his dad where he was and who he was with. He was doing his research. He didn't want his father to go to prison, but he wasn't going to let him get away with it either. After a while, Ron received a note addressed to him. It said, "You don't know your father well." Ron had suddenly lost all sense of what was going on. What was his father hiding from him? Or someone brazenly lied all this time through the letters and tried to drive his father crazy. Perhaps it was the tricks of business competitors. Then, where did the black books come from? Ron didn't want the family scandal at all. The press spread information quickly, especially if it was scandalous. Ron began to sort out his father's affairs. He stopped paying attention to his wife's business and thought less about his work. He was like a detective trying to dig up the secrets of his father. His connections helped him to find information that his father had another son with a woman. His father never mentioned his son. Ron decided to ask his mother. She was surprised and had to tell about his father's mistress and illegitimate child. "It was a long time ago. You were still young. I found a letter with a photo of the baby. Your father denied that it was his child. That's all I knew." Ron was beside himself with anger. He could not even imagine that he had lived so many years in his father's lies. When his father came home, Ron threw all the notes on the table in front of him and asked for an explanation. His father was surprised and could not say anything. "Why did you keep all this from me? Brother? Accident? Company scams?" Ron asked monotonously. "I wanted a happy family. That woman was a mistake. I didn't want to leave your mother and you. You knew about the accident. It was the only way you could get Alison. Her father was too stubborn and insistent. He did not agree to many things that would bring us profit. Yes, it was a fraud, but the business wouldn't have worked otherwise. I did everything for you." Ron turned and walked away, slamming the door. The next day, Ron waited for Alison for a long time. No one had seen her that day. It was October 25th, 2 years after the accident. About noon, Ron heard a stir in the corridor. Looking out, he saw a police squad picking up his father. He turned to Jack to call a lawyer, but he wasn't there either. When he returned to the office to collect his father's belongings, he saw another envelope. No one escapes punishment. Your brother, Jack. There were all the company's documents about transferring ownership to Jack and Alison. They were copies. Ron realized what an end their family was waiting for, and nothing could be done at the moment. He followed after his father. As it turned out, after graduating and coming to the firm, Alison fell in love with assistant Jack at first sight. Jack was later a blackmailer and secret brother of Ron's. Ron did not notice as he was investigating his father's lies. Jack eventually came forward and made the argument that Alison's parents had been murdered. He took a job at his father's and brother to avenge his mother. It was easy to find Ron's family. The family were often reported in newspapers and the press. He's been following the family's business for a long time, learning about work moments and looking for weak spots to push on. Jack had access to all the documents and was well aware of the firm's business. He waited for the right moment to destroy everything they had. He couldn't forgive a father for not acknowledging his second child. His father left his woman alone with the baby without money or help. Jack and Alison had good reasons for revenge. Everyone wanted this family to pay the price for their actions. Although Ron was not guilty of anything, he too was cunning and complex as it seemed. Ron was very much like his father. When he heard of his father's affairs, Ron did not report him to the police, which proved his nature. He could have also gone to prison for accounting as an executive director. But Jack and Alison didn't frame Ron. They put his father in charge of everything. Ron's father faced life in prison on 2 counts, a premeditated murder of several individuals and high-profile fraud. So much evidence was presented in court that the case could not be closed this time so easily with the help of his father's attorneys. Jack and Alison were able to right their wrongs and avenge their loved ones. They transferred the ownership and started the firm without fraud. Jack owned the company under the same rights as Ron. Although he was an illegitimate child, he had proof of paternity. Jack was in charge of management, overseeing company affairs. Alison became the chief architect of the holding. Her dream came true. She was doing her favorite thing. Alison donated some of her company's income to orphanages. One day, she had an idea. She wanted to auction the paintings she had painted after her parents' accident and donate all the funds to the orphanage. The auction was a tribute to her beloved father and mother. Jack was happy to support Alison and help with the organization. Soon, Alison's marriage to Ron was dissolved unilaterally, and she was able to marry Jack. Finally, Alison felt happy and loved. Her cell broke down in an instant, and she was able to take off. She was deeply in love with Jack. They had beautiful children. They looked like Alison's parents. Their lives were full of meaning. She became friends with Jack's mother immediately. She was a sweet, modest woman, much like her mother. Alison began to call her mother. Grandma spent time with the kids while the parents worked. They had a pleased and sincere family. Alison wasn't alone anymore. Ron's father had been imprisoned. Ron had taken his mother and left the country. They knew there would be no more meaningful life in this city in the past. They were never heard from again. Father was justly punished for his actions. It was a pity that he realized everything when it was already very late. After 20 years, his father got out early, but had nowhere to go. Everything he cared about disappeared because of one act. He later hung himself in his apartment. His son and wife did not come to his funeral. Maybe they didn't even know about the end of the man who once ruined their lives. Alison and Jack learned of the death from the newspapers. They visited the cemetery once a year. They visited Alison's parents.